Let me ask you this. What if I told you that one of TV's most iconic shows, so beloved it's still referenced in memes, stand-up routines, and even presidential speeches, only ever won a single Emmy? And that Emmy wasn't even for the star of the show? That's the wild story of the Honeymooners and Carney, a man who played a character so perfectly that he basically invented the modern sitcom sidekick. But here's the kicker. His performance was so nuanced, so layered, that it's easy to forget he was playing a walking, talking punchline. Let's unpack why this matters, shall we? Think about it. Jackie Gleason was the face of the Honeymooners. He was the loud, brash, always over-the-top Ralph Kramden, the guy who'd yell at the TV, scream at the bus driver, and constantly threaten to beat up his neighbor. But here's what most people don't realize. The show's emotional core wasn't Ralph's rage, it was Ed Norton's quiet resilience. Carney's Ed wasn't just a comic relief character, he was the emotional anchor. Every time Ralph exploded, Ed was there with a shrug, a deadpan stare, or that signature arm-fluttering routine that made you laugh until you cried. And personally, I think that's why the Emmy went to Carney. Because in a world that celebrates loudness, he mastered the art of silence. Now, let's talk about that acceptance speech. Imagine standing in a tuxedo at the Waldorf Astoria in 1955, surrounded by the glitterati of TV, and delivering a speech that somehow encapsulates the entire ethos of the Honeymooners. Did he start with a mock Ralphian, "Hello, Ralphie boy"? I'd bet my last dollar he did. Because that's what made Carney brilliant. He didn't just play a character, he became a cultural shorthand. His Ed Norton wasn't just a neighbor, he was the everyman, the guy who could outwit a tyrant with a single raised eyebrow. And what makes this really interesting is that Carney's performance was so subtle, so understated, that it's easy to overlook the genius in it. He turned a role that could have been a caricature into a deeply human portrayal of friendship, loyalty, and the quiet strength of someone who's always in the background but never out of the picture. But here's the deeper question. Why did the Honeymooners only win one Emmy? Was it because the show was too ahead of its time? Too focused on character depth over slapstick? Or was it simply a case of the Emmys missing the point? I mean, think about how we judge comedy today. We talk about edgy characters, dark humor, and anti-heroes. But in 1955, Carney's Ed was already doing that, being the anti-Ralph, the anti-hero who didn't need a big scene to steal the show. And if you take a step back and think about it, that's the real legacy of the Honeymooners. It proved that the best comedy isn't about explosions or punchlines, it's about the spaces between them. The pauses. The glances. The unspoken understanding between two characters who, despite their differences, are holding each other up. So next time you hear someone reference Ralph Kramden, remember that the real hero of that show wasn't the guy screaming at the TV. It was the guy who calmly signed his name with a flourish, knowing that even in a world of chaos, there's always room for a little dignity. And honestly, that's the kind of storytelling that deserves an Emmy or 10.